Have you ever heard the MCG like that? Are you kidding me? Yeah, are you kidding me? The Carlton gods must be crazy.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge. And geez, it's nice to have that winning feeling, isn't it? It's very refreshing. I will say that. But you know, it was a game that I think ranks up there. Probably not quite to the extent of the Geelong performance, the Geelong win, but it's up there. It's up there for a number of reasons. And, you know, it was a win, and it was a scrappy win at that. But, you know, that's the nature of Ross Lyon's style of play that he kind of forces you into, you know, to have the heart and spirit to maintain a sustained effort across 4 quarters was impressive. But, you know, to do that in respect of having so many troops injured, you know, is what really impressed me the most. You know, Gov, he went off injured in the first. Cowan went off with that hamstring injury. Akers, he popped a shoulder out. And the likes of Sauce and Haynes also copped their fair whacks as well. And I think Haynes was assessed on the bench at one stage. Sauce was hobbling. You know, it was quite funny that the knocks and niggles kind of were isolated within our defence, just the way it sort of worked out through no rhyme or reason. But the loss of the quality, I think, just chatting to, you know, the injuries is really one thing. But, you know, to be able to cover that quality and, you know, shake up the structure was huge. You know, Chera, he was sent back for support at various stages late in the piece in defence. Young, he continued his pleasing form and, you know, being able to swing from both ends of the ground to great effect as well. Looked really good. And, you know, moreover, being down in rotations off the bench, you know, I kind of half expected us to, you know, have a reason to run out of legs towards the back end of the game. And, you know, we've kind of done that out of maybe a lack of effort, spirit, fitness, who knows, previously at the start of the season. But, you know, it goes to show, even when we were pressured, even though we were virtually out on our legs due to being down, I think, 2 rotations, we still were able to compete right up until the final siren. You know, we definitely lowered our colours in, especially the middle, at stoppages against the Crows, but we really did rectify things in this game. You know, the run and spread was a definite highlight for me, I think. You know, there's been a bit of an issue, I think, where we've been too stagnant in, you know, especially in the centre for the, you know, for centre bounces, stoppages as well. But, you know, they're set up in that respect. They're not, you know, being in the right positions. When we do get our hands on the ball, we're caught and, you know, another stoppage is forced and we're not finding teammates in the right positions at the right time. So there were so many times, and go back and watch a replay if you haven't. I've done so and enjoyed it the second time around because I was there watching it live, and you do tend to sort of miss things. I saw that we were definitely impactful and dominant in the middle, but didn't see to the extent of how we were kind of setting up and everything else. But our lateral spread and movement with the ball was chef's kiss, really. And it was a big part of why and how we got on top of the Saints. So with that, I mean, there's a couple of moments that I want to highlight. I might try and lay the highlights over the top of what I'm sort of touching on, but due to copyright, due to YouTube flagging things when it comes to using Match Vision, I may not be able to use it, but I'll give it a go. If it's not on the video, you'll know why. But if it is, I will try to use it sparingly at the very least, because there were specific moments that were just incredible and really blew me away. And I was like, is this the same Carlton team that we're talking about here? And I just want to sort of highlight specific moments, specific players, and, you know, passages of play that just absolutely blew me away. So we'll do that in a moment. But let us check out, as we always do, the stats, because they do tell a fair portion of the tale. Let's start with disposals. Fairly even across the board. You know, I spoke about it in the preview episode. Some of you may have seen that I thought it was going to be an arm wrestle. It normally is against the Saints, just because I think they match up on us very, very well. And, you know, I think it was an advantage for us with this game being at the MCG, different sort of dimensions, confines, everything else. But, you know, it was an arm wrestle throughout the game. So if we roll down here, inside 50s, we were actually dead even with 46 apiece, which we had 22 scoring shots to St Kilda's 17. So good to see there. I mean, almost 50%. Disposal efficiency, 72.3% for us. St Kilda, 74.5. Both sides above their season average. Efficiency inside 50, 52.2%. And we had St Kilda at 41.3%. And look at that. We were well above our season average, almost by 10%. And whilst the Saints, they were down by around about 8%. So a really, really pleasing sign here, and something that I think we really need to build upon, because there were moments as well where we were hitting up leading targets. We weren't just bombing it long. There were moments where we were kind of still bombing it long to the square, which I think we probably could have lowered our eyes and, looked laterally, which we kind of did at various stages. There was a Durden's kick where he could have blazed away. He was kind of, 35 metres out, inside 50, looked laterally, saw Cripper by himself, and, ended up hitting him up and, credited it. More of I think, a better scoring opportunity given the pressure at that given moment, given the St Kilda players were kind of, pressing in. Free kicks, 24-18. That's probably no surprise. It looked on the night that there was more in the favour of St Kilda. There were a couple of, I think on the night they were, I'd say ordinary, I think, for both sides. They were letting a heap of head-high tackles go, yet they were paying those that players were initiating. Jack Higgins, as we always know, he copped a head-high hit. I think it was from Hollands. Higgins literally lowered his body, bent his knees, and I think his head actually hit Hollands' chest, but, was given the head high. So those are sort of frustrating, but is what it is. Stoppages. Now, we won the hitouts, 42-34, and we were above our season average. Looked pretty good, and I think TDK, in all honesty, absolutely wiped the floor with Marshall. Marshall started to get back on top, not on top, but to more sort of, level pegging, you might say, towards the back part of the game, probably due to TDK tiring a bit. But I think just overall, in terms of when we're talking dominance and outplaying your opponent, I think TDK did an incredible job. So many times where we actually just assessed the right moments to take the ball out of the ruck and either distribute to a teammate or kick it forward and potentially create a scoring opportunity. So TDK, tip of the cap to you. And, Marshall is quite a mobile ruckman. So to be quite evenly matched, I think, on paper, and to come away with, what I thought was a very good performance. Tip of the cap to you, old mate. But clearances 43-33. So again, just speaks to the dominance that we had in the middle. And more sort of dominance around the ground in terms of stoppages and the clearances we were getting via those means. Possession-wise, we had more of the ball in terms of contested possessions, 125-109, which was good to see. Both teams were actually down on their season average, which is very interesting. But, I thought contested possessions might have been up. It was a fair old slog because of, as I said from the top, Ross Lyon, he loves to put numbers around the footy. There was, I reckon, 20 plus players around stoppages, especially late in the game when Ross Lyon was trying to sort of, shut things down and, cause turnovers and get goals via those means. But uncontested possessions, as you can see there, 216-223, much for muchness. Turnovers, 54-56. Marks were very even, 108-107. Marks inside 50. This is the other pleasing part here. We had 13-8. So we restricted St Kilda below their season average, whilst we actually had two more, all around about, 1.6 more, if you want to, count the decimals, more marks inside 50s compared to our season average. Contested marks 8-7. And as I said there, 22 scoring shots to 17. So a really, really solid performance all around, and is reflected in the stats. Defensively, we'll just go through that. Tackles 74-69. We still are above our season average, which is pleasing to see. St Kilda, they actually upped. They were actually 13 more tackles than their season average, which they would be very, very happy with. Tackles inside 50, 22-18 in St Kilda's favour. Again, they doubled their season average. We were above our season average, which is good to see. And 1%ers, 43-36, which I really like as well, because that indicates, second, third efforts and, 1%ers, putting in the extra miles and, doing the extra things, not just the basics. So, I'll talk about the basics in terms of, kick marks, everything else. Like this is spoils, smothers, knock-ons, all that sort of stuff. So really, really love when I see that. And we were actually on par with our season average. Interestingly enough, actually, the interchanges there, we actually had 14 interchanges up our sleeve. Season average is 70, and we had 61. But that probably more speaks to just thinking about it being down on rotation. So less rotations or less, open positions on the bench to rotate players through probably speaks to that. But, again, just highlighting the fact that we had less rotations again just shows that we are fit enough to do it. It just comes down to sustained effort and, doing that across 4 quarters. We will go into the deeper dive with stats by just having a quick look at last week when I was chatting about, the origins of scoring and how we were conceding, I guess, scores via specific avenues and means. And I was highlighting the opposition averages in terms of, where we concede most of our scores in comparison to St Kilda. And as it turned out, we actually conceded the equal league least scores via turnovers, while St Kilda, they actually conceded the sixth most. And I did identify the fact that the stats and numbers were indicating that we could expose them, in terms of turnovers and, using those avenues as, options to score. And turnover was a big one. And as you saw, on the night, we actually got a bulk of our scores and goals via those means, via turnover. So 9 goals, 5, 59 we got via turnover, and we got 2 goals, 5 from stoppages. So it just goes to show, that stats, they do indicate and they do, allow you to try and find ways to expose the opposition. And I think we probably should have done that against the Crows because they were, conceding a fair few points via turnover, and we weren't able to capitalize on that. And, because we weren't applying the required amount of pressure and tackling pressure to force those turnovers to then get scoring opportunities off the back of them. And I do think, sustained effort across the 4 quarters. We saw, naturally, given the game was so congested, especially around stoppages, that, naturally turnovers were going to occur at some stage or another, but it was how we were placed after forcing the turnover to really capitalize. There were numerous moments where, we forced a turnover and we were just in the right positions. We ran to the right positions. We exposed St Kilda because they were caught out in open space, and we just kind of picked them apart. So it looked really, really good, and it was good to see that we were able to capitalize on that area that we outlined in our preview. Let us go through now, I guess, just some key moments that we just want to touch on that really epitomized the win and spoke to teamwork, sustained effort, and, working for each other, 1%ers, so on and so forth. So let us go through and outline these. So first off was the Bins goal, which was absolutely beautiful running support, almost cascading laterally in waves. I found previously where we've kind of had the footy and we've run into a brick wall of opposition players, we kind of don't know what to do. We just sort of panicked into, just bombing the ball forward without looking as to where it's going. More often than not, it falls in the hands of the opposition players and it forces that turnover. Whereas this time around, like that beautiful moment where Bins kicked the goal and it was like handball to a, Carlton player, handball over the top, knock it on, and always providing an option really at the end of the day. And a bit of a get out when the Saints' rolling maul of pressure was so hard to get around because they kind of like just moved back and forth, from defense to the forward line to back and forth and trying to force those turnovers. And I think we did really well to counter that as well, with our own sort of rolling ball at various stages and just providing options laterally to get out because they kind of were guarding either the outer side, the outer wing, or the corridor, and, they did it in bulk numbers. So if you're able to go laterally, you could really pick them apart. So that was really good to see. Hewitt's handball out of stoppage. It was a handball into space, which then led us to hit up Charles and goal as a result. So that was incredible. Charlie's one-hand mark and play on for goal. That's a classic. And when Charlie takes a mark like that and plays on, he almost does it with instinct as opposed to, a set play or anything else because that instinct comes out when he's of the utmost confident in his abilities, and he was absolutely incredible across the night. So just absolute insanity. And Charlie, he was definitely on, and that was, a bit of play early on that indicated that. Now, Durden, Absolutely beautiful vision. When we're running the ball up along the wing, he had an option there to blaze away, but using him as an example earlier, he looked laterally, saw Cripper was free, and kicked to him. And, that just shows smarts and incredible teamwork. Now, I don't know if that's a set play, but either way, I think for you to have the presence of mind in that moment, I think it was around about 35, 40 metres out potentially, he was well within his rights to kick for goal. But given the pressure, given the amount of St Kilda players at that point in time in that area, probably would have been a low percentage chance of him kicking for goal successfully, snapping around his body. I mean, he could have, but I think just to see this and play the percentages really, this is just really epitomizes the way that the team played and did so well in terms of setting up their teammates instead of trying to be selfish. So a lot of it was selfless play, and as I said, just shows the smarts of Dirds. Now, I spoke about TDK smashing Marshall in the ruck, and that was best summed up by TDK, taking it out of the ruck, various stages, handballing to passage of play here by him, handballing to Binns, who snapped for goal. Unfortunately, it was touched, but again, it highlights the influence that TDK has at stoppages, more so, as that extra midfielder almost, as opposed to just being a ruckman. You look at his hitouts to advantage. He probably doesn't stack up alongside the likes of a Gorn, who's more of a dominant ruckman. TDK is more of that hybrid and probably plays more to the impact and effectiveness of being that extra midfielder, getting his hands on the footy and not just tapping it to his teammates. So an incredible game from TDK, and that really did epitomise him. Haynes was another one who, largely was our deepest defender and played the role to perfection. He was simply outstanding, provided beautiful timing, reading of the play, interceptability on numerous occasions, and saved what would have been a certain goal from a low kick from Owens and marked on the line. I can't recall what quarter it was, but he was the last line of defense, really. Literally, he was on the line. So he has been a revelation, I think. He copped a fair whack from supporters and, those in the media alike for his slow start to the season. But he, I think, is right up there and should be spoken about in the same conversation as Sauce and Weeders, because he's almost like that third tier for us, where we've kind of unlocked the ability for him to play that roaming defender, intercept marking role that he did so well at the Giants that really earned him those All-Australian selection when he was there, one of the best and fairest as well. So even though he is an older player, yes, he comes with experience though. He's done it all before, and his kicking as well is so clean. There was a passage of play there where he hit up TDK with a laser-like pass inside of 50 in the third, and he's turned into a bit of a centerpiece of our defense and an incredible recruit after, as I said, so much criticism early on. So again, tip the old cap to you, Nick Haynes. Speaking of Sauce, pushed up the ground. There was a passage of play that, he sold the candy and then hit up Charlie with an absolute dart early in the second, which had me drooling. He highlighted how much really that we did miss him the previous week against the Crows and how important he is to our back six structure because, as I said, it's Weeders, it's Sauce, it's Haynes. Without these three guys, and it's no coincidence that when we have all three guys playing, they all play very, very well. When it's only two of the three guys, we're probably not as impactful, and it's no, coincidence there because they all work in unison. They all complement each other and do it incredibly well. Now, can we speak about Walshy for a moment? Like, he was absolutely untouchable. Numerous times there where he had opponents hanging off him, trying to bring him to ground, but had the strength in his core to keep his feet and distribute the ball to great effect. He had a great sidestep in the first quarter, and again late in quarter three as well, setting up Harry for goal in the goal square. Probably in that moment there, he probably should have looked laterally, much like Durden did, because I think there were a couple of teammates that were free, but just his ability, and I see these moments and I'm like, it gets me excited. It gets those juices flowing because I'm a massive fan of Walshy, and he's been off the boil for a little while now, probably namely due to injury. He's battled with his back injuries over a number of seasons now. But it just kind of is a little bit of a snapshot of what we know and love from Walshy when he's at top level. And he was at great effect as well throughout the game where he was kind of spreading wide and whilst he wasn't kind of playing a traditional wing position, he was spreading wide enough to be on the wing almost, and it was allowing him enough time and space to really make good use of the footy, hit up targets, and just to have that presence of mind, confidence in, sidestepping opponents, getting out of traffic, holding your feet, handballing to teammates, and setting up goals, in a chain of possessions is such an underrated thing I think that Walshy does provide to us and to our engine room. So really was an incredible game from Walshy. I don't think he lit up the stat sheet. I don't think he absolutely smashed it by any means. Let me just have a quick look in terms of disposal numbers. He had 21, so it wasn't like massive, but score involvements, he ended up having 9 for the game, which I think would have been, there you go, equal most. Just having a look at this here. So there he is there at the top of the list with 9. So an incredible game there from Walshy. Really underrated, I think. I haven't really seen much spoken about him apart from, the obvious with Hewitt, Charlie, so on and so forth. But really was a great game from good old Walshy. Now, Binns, he did some really nice things. Being included in the team, I was like, I love rewarding players for sustained, good form and effort in the VFL. So he definitely deserved a go. One thing I was looking at with him was his disposal efficiency because that can let him down a bit. But to go forward and kick some goals as well and create, opportunities was really, really, really needed. So, he ended up having, what was it in the end? 22 disposals. And, his disposal efficiency wasn't the best. He had 45.5%, which is very low. But, I think once he cleans that up, if he can clean it up, he can become a very good player, finds himself in the right positions. There are times there where he is out of position, but, that comes with a bit of experience that hopefully he will get through opportunity at senior level, because the pace of senior level, as we know, is definitely different to what is at VFL level. Now, want to really highlight as well Lord's kicking skills. Now, I'm disappointed to see this bloke continually being named as the sub because with a full game, he shows that he can be an incredible contributor to the team. I'm just looking for his stats here. He ended up having, I just want to sort of highlight this. He had 12 disposals and he had 8 tackles. So again, what he brings in terms of pressure, and we know that Voss and the coaching staff love players that provide that pressure. Hence the reason why we've got, 4 or 5 small forwards. But to come on and do that was a really, really, really good thing. And tip of the cap to him because he doesn't complain by the looks of it. He's playing a role. He's almost a super sub, but he can offer so much more, I think. So really, he came on and there was a bit of play there, which his kicking skills were crucial late in the game. Owens, he got a free kick in the ruck. They kicked it forward and we were able to clear. So Lord was actually one who cut open the play with his precise kick through the middle. He then runs on and provides the hit-up option inside 50. So he's doing it at both ends. And it really speaks to that work rate, which is incredible, and repeat efforts as well, 1%ers. And to go back and extend the margin to 9 at that stage of the game was very, very crucial. So, Lord, you are an absolute lord. Tackle efficiency, you want to speak to this as well because I spotted this on the broadcast on Fox Footy. And they said the tackle efficiency, which speaks to the number of tackles that were attempted versus the number of tackles that were laid successfully. So the season average is 64%. Now, our tackle efficiency was 87%. So we attempted 79 tackles and had 69 in the end. So only 10 of those didn't stick. So again, just highlights and speaks to relentless pressure, executing it perfectly and, just doing things to a T. Efficiency, application of, what you're trying to attempt. It's just tick, 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 tick. So really big ticks across the board. But I want to end things here with a bit of a chat about the play of the day for me. And it does involve Walshy, as I spoke about with his evasiveness. It was at the 12-minute mark of the first quarter, and he was surrounded by 5, I think it was almost 6 St Kilda opponents. Now, he was given the ball. He was able to have the presence of mind, the, confidence in his own ability and in his body more than anything. He stopped, assessed things, sidestepped. It was almost like the proverbial, snapping ankles type thing because they didn't know which way he was going. He just stepped through traffic, almost very much like Pendlebury in a sense. Handball to a running option, kick onto space, and White plays the incredible small forward role as well, reading the flow of the play and running into the dangerous position at the top of the square. And again, it goes to, moving the ball laterally, not just up and down the ground, and providing options, because it shows that White was able to identify, and again, this is great reading the play, because he would have been running from, almost through the corridor, the middle of the ground when Walshy had the ball. He had the presence of mind to know that I've got to keep running on and I've got to sprint as hard as I can, because in all likelihood, if we get the ball successfully, if we move it down, you could easily kick the ball to him, which is the longest option. He can run onto it and kick a goal. And that's just what happened. So a really, really great passage of play. It shows, I guess, chemistry of the team, and the cohesiveness really of, the ball movement and working as one. So it was a very, very great sight to see, and one that I absolutely loved, and I marked it down as my play of the day. But with that, ladies and gents, we might leave things there. Let us know what your play of the day was. Would love to hear, what the biggest highlight was for you. And feel free as well to identify any players that really stood out, whether it be specific moments or just generally as well. There were so many different positives to take out of the game, plays, set plays, players that were playing well. So it really does go to show that when we have, more often than not, a majority of our team playing to our full ability, that we can get the result. And we did really well to get through the pressure that Ross Lyon was implementing. It was virtually like a rolling park the bus style, as they say in football, in soccer, where he was kind of just trying to block up space and not allow us to have the time and space to hit up targets. And we just had the patience, presence of mind, confidence in our ability to get the job done. So that was a really, really big takeaway. It was a scrappy game. I know it wasn't the best to watch, but you look at these specific moments throughout the game, and they paint the bigger picture and why this is a very, very nice win from the boys. So that's it, ladies and gents. Thanks as always for tuning in. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. We'll be back for the preview of the Sydney game to come. Another big game, another big clash of a team that is very similar to us at various stages, like St Kilda, but however, we play them on their home deck in Sydney, so it is a very big challenge. We will be back with that, but in the meantime, we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.